Hi, everyone. So as Bill mentioned, today I'll be presenting Can a Nudge Improve Student Performance? It's a replication of an online coach barriers to success intervention. So I'm currently on the staff at the Center for Economic Education and Entrepreneurship at the University of Delaware. This work was done at my previous institution, Michigan State University, with two of my colleagues there, Stephen Haider and Scott Imberman. Oops. So a little bit of background here. We at Michigan State were having the discussion about how we improve student success. And this is a conversation that many of you are probably also having at your institutions. And specifically within the economics department, we were concerned about improving student success in the introductory economics courses. We were concerned about multiple different groups of students performing well and attracting particular majors. At the same time, we were trying to look for some small, low-cost nudge or intervention to try and maybe push student success and improvements there. And then we had what I call a fortuitous visit. So we had a visit from Phil Oreopoulos at the University of Toronto. He gave a seminar on this paper, The Remarkable Unresponsiveness of College Students to Nudging and What We Can Learn from It. And in conversations with Phil, we realized that he was doing a lot of really interesting things at Toronto that we could try and replicate at Michigan State. Also give him some more data points to see if what he found in this paper could be applied to other institutions. So in the broader context of our research question, we're trying to determine, as many other authors in this session are, can a nudge improve student performance? More specifically, what we try to look at is, can encouraging emails and text messages improve student performance, particularly when looking at students' identified barriers to success? So what is preventing students in their own mind from being successful in not only economics courses, but in college overall? So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the literature review. Basically, just to sum this up, we see that in college courses, there's a lack of student effort and study time. There have been many interventions to try and change student behavior through trying to help them set goals, try and increase study time, better time management. And all of these things have been identified by research and students as potential barriers to their success. There have been mixed results of different small behavioral nudges in college classrooms. And so we wanted to see, would our intervention move the needle at Michigan State? So the intervention we chose was called Barriers to Success. This is also called, in Phil's paper, Online Coaching Only. We changed the name slightly at Michigan State just for our own kind of purposes, as well as we changed one or two of the questions, but there is very minor change from the Online Coaching Only. And what the Barriers to Success intervention looked at is it had students look at what were their future goals and then barriers they may face to achieving those goals. This was administered through something we call Student Achievement Lab. And Student Achievement Lab looks something like this. What you see on the right-hand side here is different interventions that Phil and his team at the University of Toronto have tried over the years at University of Toronto and also multiple other institutions. So this was already set up in an online platform that we could push to students. So what we see is we took the Barriers to Success one, which is actually all the way at the bottom. I couldn't quite get it in a screenshot here. And we administered this intervention to 3 sections of Principles of Microeconomics and Principles of Macroeconomics in spring 2019. There were 2 sections of micro and 1 section of macro. So we started the intervention with a warm-up survey. So to incentivize students to participate, this was worth 1% of their overall course grade. It was a minimal amount, and it was just based on whether or not they completed the warm-up survey. The warm-up survey included first a series of background questions about themselves. And then after they completed the background questions, there was random assignment of the students to the treatment, which was the intervention, or to a control group. If students were assigned to the treatment, they received something like this, where it was a kind of a lengthy exercise. You'll see here the exercise took about 45 to 90 minutes. And in this, students were asked to think about their own education and their future in part 1. And then in part 2, they were asked to tell us why they think other students struggle and suggest ways your peers may overcome challenges. The reason we had them talk about their peers rather than themselves was we wanted them to kind of take it outside of themselves and not necessarily have an ego view of this. And we found that, and Phil and other people in the past found that this was a better approach here. So it was a lengthy exercise. And I'm just going to show you the first kind of screenshot they saw. So what you see here is part one, how to succeed. So we tell them things like, okay, here are 6 tips for general success in a university. The first one being study enough. So in all of the different kind of things here, we had a little prompt for them and said, here's why studying is important. Here's why studying effectively is important. Then we asked students to either think and write about the prompt, as we had them do here, for about 3 to 7 minutes and then move on. Or we had them do a series of Likert items. Do they agree, disagree? For some of the time management aspects, we had them maybe organize what they thought would be appropriate with time. It depended on the individual question. The control group was given a personality assessment, and so the beginning page they saw was here. The personality assessment results were then emailed to the student afterwards in case they wanted to know how they did on the personality assessment. The treatment group also received text messages on Mondays and Fridays, and these text messages provided generic study tips and generic check-ins with the student. The text messages were preset at the beginning of the semester based on what they had identified as barriers to success in the initial warm-up survey. They also received emails on Sundays. These emails were course-specific with the due dates and announcements. The control group also received these same emails with course-specific due dates and announcements. They just did not receive the text messages that the treatment group received. At the end of the semester, all students were administered a follow-up survey, again, worth 1% of their grade to incentivize them to complete this. This was given to both the treatment and control group, though the treatment group saw some slightly different questions at the end than the control group did. So this is what the screenshot of the follow-up survey looked like. It was a very brief survey that students just had to complete in the last week of classes. It asked about their general well-being, some questions about their study time, their academic performance, and then they had to evaluate the intervention. And the evaluating the intervention was only given to the students in the treatment group. So we gave this to just under 1,400 students in 2 sections of Principles of Micro and 1 section of Principles of Macro in spring 2019. 1,227 students completed the initial survey. We then linked this data with administrative data, and 1,212 students out of those received a grade in the course. 990 students completed the follow-up survey. So we had a little bit of loss there. As I mentioned, we linked the intervention data with administrative data from Michigan State University, and we specifically looked at background characteristics as well as their grade in the course. So what you see here are some of our results. Panel A up here in this table examines whether background characteristics were different between the 2 groups. You'll see here that there are no statistically or significant differences here. So the numbers in parentheses are the standard errors, not the statistical significance. You'll see here that it was pretty balanced in terms of females and in terms of domestic and international students. We chose that because that was something that we wanted to look at in terms of student success at Michigan State. What you see here on the bottom with the female and domestic with the 2 asterisks next to it, that is just for the 999 students who completed the exit or the follow-up survey. That was the restricted sample. When we take a look at the outcomes, we see here, and what we were able to see is that the grades differences between the treatment and the control group were not, the difference here was not statistically significant. We also see the same thing with the positive experience. No, the treatment group versus the control group, the difference there is not statistically significant. The interesting thing we did find was that the control group reported studying more during the semester than the control group reported studying more than the treatment group did. And this was statistically significant, which was a little puzzling to us, but an interesting result nonetheless. We also wanted to take it and see how the treatment students particularly rated the program. And what we see here is that while more students rated the program favorably, so about 42% of students agreed the program was helpful, 40% disagreed, there were more strong negative views than positive ones. So that was interesting too. So what did we find? We found that the intervention had at most minor positive effects on achievement and attitude, similar to Phil's paper. So we kind of went back to the drawing board here and decided this is not something that we wanted to implement in all of our courses. briefly, we're hoping to figure out a way to kind of nudge students in the right direction, as I'm sure many of us are in terms of their success. I want to thank my MSU colleagues, Stephen and Scott. Thank you to Phil Oriopoulos at the University of Toronto. I want to thank Andrea, who was my graduate research assistant, and then James, who helped with the online platform. If you have any questions, you can send me an email. This is my email. Thanks so much.